The great general demanded to marry the eldest daughter of the Wen family, who had spent 3 years as a military slave in Baidi. She had long been tortured into absolute insanity, riddled with countless dirty habits. She had an obsession with stealing and hoarding things, screaming in terror whenever anyone got near her. One of her legs was crippled, leaving her to stumble and totter with every step she took. I tried to warn him, "General, marrying a wife like this will make you the laughingstock of the entire world."
Mongol.
She is Wen Zhao. Of course I know she is Wen Zhao, the once celebrated beauty and most talented woman who took the capital by storm. But that was 3 years ago.
Wen Zhao was brought into the household merely as a concubine.
Entering through the side gate, she was carried in with nothing but a single, plain red sedan chair. There wasn't even a wedding banquet held between our two families. The master refused to let such a crazed woman walk through the main gates, terrified she would bring shame to the Wei family name. Honestly, you can't blame him for thinking that way. After all, Wen Zhao is now the biggest joke in the entire capital. She was found in the tents of the Baidi military slaves. That place was a literal living hell. It was filthy, putrid, and decaying. The women there were chained up, crammed together like beasts in a pen. The walls were lined with gruesome torture devices. Long needles designed to be driven under fingernails, red-hot branding irons, and finger-crushing clamps. If any woman dared to step out of line, she would face a brutal, agonizing punishment. After a round of that nightmare, even the strongest, most resilient woman would break. Yanliu, the general's attendant, was the one who told me all of this. Whenever he recalled that place, he would do nothing but shake his head in horror. "Hell," he muttered. It was worse than hell. The Baidi's methods of torture are unspeakably cruel and sinister. They don't treat people as humans. They treat them worse than beasts. When our army finally broke in and witnessed the horrific butchery inside, not a single soldier dared to step forward. In the end, it was the general who led the way, ordering his men to take off their cloaks and cover those poor women. When Cheng's state was defeated, they surrendered 3,000 innocent women to the brutal Baidi invaders. But in the end, only 53 of them made it back alive. And now, Wen Zhao is the only survivor left. Within less than a month of their return, the other 52 women all died under mysterious circumstances. Some allegedly took their own lives, some supposedly died of sudden illnesses, and others just vanished without a trace. They used every high-sounding excuse in the book, concocting all kinds of bogus charges. They dragged these poor women, who had just escaped the wolf's den of Baidi, right back into hell. The only reason Wen Zhao survived was because the general visited the Wen manor to see her every single day. The Wen family simply hadn't found the chance to strike yet. Wei Lin truly believed that once he rescued those women from Baidi, they would finally be safe. But he severely underestimated the poisonous power of gossip and toxic societal morals. Having been forced into military brothels in Baidi, their purity was ruined. Not only could they never marry, but they were seen as a permanent stain of shame on their families. Worse yet, their very existence was a constant, painful reminder to everyone in the Shang kingdom of the humiliation and oppression they suffered during the defeat. These women had sacrificed their bodies and their lives to buy 3 years of peace for the kingdom. Now, 3 years later, as the Shang kingdom grew strong and powerful, their presence was suddenly deemed a national disgrace. All 52 of them died in total silence. Not a single whisper of the truth ever got out. How Wei Lin found out about all this was a complete accident. That night, he had been held up late with military affairs, but he missed Wen Zhao so desperately that he couldn't help himself. Her mental state was highly unstable. Wei Lin was terrified of startling her, so he decided to scale the wall in secret, just to catch a quick, distant glimpse of her. He never expected that this single glance would reveal the Wen family's servants, forcing medicine down her throat. She was thrashing wildly, fighting back with every ounce of strength she had. An old maid sighed mockingly. "My lady, just drink it up and be good. This is a slow-acting poison. In about 10 days, your suffering will finally be over." "Ah! Do you seriously still think you're some high and mighty young mistress? All the other women are dead. How do you still have the nerve to keep breathing? You've completely disgraced the Wen family. The second mistress is so incredibly unlucky to have a sister like you. Drink this quickly, and don't you dare ruin her marriage prospects." Ever since Wen Zhao was sent away to Baidi, her younger sister, Wen Ya, had taken her place as the city's top beauty and most talented young lady. Now everyone only knows Wen Ya, the second mistress of the Wen family. No one even remembers her older sister, Wen Zhao. Now that Wen Ya has reached marriageable age, having a crazy, mentally unstable older sister would inevitably ruin her chances of a good match. So much for sisterly love. It all boiled down to mere self-interest, and Wei Lin was consumed with rage. With one stroke of his sword, he severed the vile servant's hand. Blood splattered everywhere. Clutching his severed arm, the man rolled on the ground in agony, screaming and wailing non-stop. He raised his sword, pointing it at another servant, and snarled, "Who ordered you to treat her like this?" "General, spare my life." The young lady. I practically watched her grow up, I didn't want to do this either, but Master and Madam gave us an absolute order
That she must die within 2 weeks.
You come to see her every day. If she died suddenly, it would look too suspicious.
That's why they had us use a slow-acting poison.
We had no choice. As long as they are alive, they are a disgrace to the Shao Kingdom and a disgrace to the family.
Everyone else is dead. She has to die too, just to protect the Wen family's reputation. Who do you mean by everyone else? The 53 women you brought back from Beatty. Right now, only the young lady is still alive.
The sword in his hand clattered to the ground,
Wei Dan tumbled all over, stumbling back 2 steps.
nearly collapsing.
That day, after we brought Wen Zhao back to the Wei residence,
Yao Lo tiptoed over to knock on my bedroom door.
Namo, you need to go check on them, quickly.
something terrible has happened. I quickly threw on some clothes and followed him to Wei Lin's room.
The room was filled with the pungent stench of blood.
So foul that it made me want to throw up.
Suppressing the urge to vomit, I took a few steps inside. Leland's room was very simply furnished,
With no extra decorations, screens, or curtains. The moment I looked up, I saw Wen Zhao lying on the bed, her entire body drenched in crimson blood. I rushed over to her immediately. How did she get hurt this badly? Wei Lin clutched his chest and said hoarsely, "She is just asleep."
The blood on her is mine. Only then did I notice that blood was steadily seeping out of his own chest,
And his face was deathly pale.
I gasped in horror. Who on earth could have hurt you?
Wei Lin was incredibly skilled.
Not only was he unmatched in the entire Shankridom,
But even among the fiercely savage Beatty people, not a single warrior could ever lay a finger on him. To wound him this badly, they would have to be either a god or a demon. Gritting his teeth against the agonizing pain, Wei Ling whispered in a trembling voice, "She was the one who stabbed me."
whip her body down for me and help her change into clean clothes. I'll go find a doctor to treat her. Wei Lin forced himself up, struggling to stand.
加油，身体防落他。
By the time I finished helping Wen Zhao change, Xiaoliu finally tiptoed back into the room.
He explained the whole story to me. With a heavy sigh, he said, "The general wanted to carry Wen Zhao back. She was absolutely terrified by those beasts in the Wen family." Screaming in terror, she grabbed the general's sword from the ground and stabbed him ruthlessly. The general couldn't bear to hurt her, so he just stood there and let her stab him. In the end, I had to knock her out with a single strike just to bring her back. I watched over Wen Zhao until past midnight, but Wei Lin still hadn't returned. I nudged Xiaoliu, who was snoring like thunder,
And asked him where the general went.
and why he was taking so long just to get his wounds treated.
Let me think.
My mind is a complete mess right now. After I accompanied the general to the medical clinic,
He casually asked me where he could buy some incense and joss paper.
do you think he went to the mass grave in the dead of night to pay his respects to those deceased women? This was bad. The mass grave was deep in the mountain forest, and the mounting trails were incredibly steep and rugged.
If it were the usual Wei Lin, we wouldn't have to worry at all.
But he was severely injured right now. There was no telling what kind of accident might happen to him. I immediately grabbed 2 torches and headed up the mountain with Xiaoliu to search for him. Fortunately, the moon was exceptionally bright tonight, hanging high in the sky and casting a silver glow over the earth. When we finally found Wei Lin, he was sitting on the cold ground, drinking alone. Beside him was a pile of burning joss paper, crackling in the flames. The bright yellow firelight flickered, and the flames leaped and danced into the night. His expression was incredibly cold and solemn. Xiaoliu whispered that the general must be consumed by guilt right now. He told me that back when they first rescued those women, a few of them tried to flee in the middle of the night.
The other soldiers mistook them for assassins and dragged them to the
General's tent for interrogation, only to realize they were the very women they had saved earlier that day.
Those women fell to their knees, begging him, "General,
If we go back, we will die." We swallowed our pride, holding on to life like raw wounds just to survive until now.
we suffered 3 years of humiliation here.
Our innocence stripped away.
If we go back, we're dead for sure."
No, you won't. You are all heroes of the sacred state.
Before I led the army to war,
Your parents and brothers came to my estate with gifts.
you begging me to bring you back. They miss you terribly. He wasn't lying.
Before Wei Lin set off with the army, many families whose daughters had been taken indeed came to the Wei estate with gifts. Among those 3,000 women, many were daughters of low-ranking officials or merchants. Wei Ling was too young and too confident, completely blind to the hidden agendas at play.
He didn't realize that while many claimed to miss their daughters,
They were actually just using it as an excuse to suck up to the Wei family.
normally they could never dream of making such a connection.
So why not seize this chance to get close? It was a golden opportunity. In truth, deep down, They wished their daughters were already dead. Having a daughter who served as a military prostitute in an enemy country was worse than having no daughter at all. The moon shone bright in a sparse sky,
The night wind blowing in cold gusts.
messing up the loose strands of hair on Wei Lin's forehead. He tilted his head back, pouring wine down his throat,
Only to choke on it.
coughing violently, which immediately ripped open his wound.
The freshly wrapped white bandages were instantly soaked in blood. Johnny rushed over in a panic.
General, stop drinking! Wei Lin smashed the wine jar onto the ground and laughed hysterically to the sky. But as he laughed, he began to cry.
I thought, when they saw how much their daughters had suffered, they would be heartbroken and lovingly make up for those 3 years of suffering.
He spent 3 years in that living hell in the north, and it didn't kill them?
Yet, less than 1 month after returning to the sacred state, they're dead.
And by the hands of the very people they loved most.
How ridiculous! Ha ha! What is right? What is wrong?
Bringing those women back.
Was it right? Or was it wrong?
No one could really explain it. I walked over to comfort him. General, this isn't your fault.
This is just how the world is.
A woman who has lost her innocence is doomed to be despised by everyone.
It's all just fate.
The world? What kind of world? If the world is really like this, then I will challenge this world head on. When Wei Lin said those words, he looked exactly like the late Madame Shen.
Madame Shen had truly raised both him and the young mistress incredibly well.
I let out a long sigh. Thinking of Madame Shen, my heart ached with bitter sorrow.
Wei Lin's mother, Madame Shen, had once saved my life.
When my daughter was born, she was drowned immediately.
My sweet baby girl, whom I almost died giving birth to.
Was forced down and drowned in a wooden bucket. Just like that.
I screamed and cried hysterically.
But my in-laws just stood there, coldly saying that the firstborn had to be a boy.
They said girls belong to Yin, and only boys belong to Yang.
They claimed a girl would only bring bad luck. Overcome with grief and rage, I packed my things and fled as soon as my body recovered a little. After wandering aimlessly, I ended up at the Wei estate
And worked as a maid, serving Madame Shen.
But before long, my husband's family tracked me down.
They wanted to drag me back. Everyone said I had run away from my husband's family illegally and that they should send me back. But they should send me back. It was Madame Shen who stepped in to protect me.
Only then was I able to stay.
She was breathtakingly beautiful. Her features were delicate like a painting,
And her eyes were as bright and clear as autumn waters.
she often talked about things like the feudal society and equality for all, or women's rights. I didn't understand any of it. I only knew that Madame Shen treated every single one of us with utmost kindness.
At first, the master and Madame Shen loved each other deeply.
But everything changed once Liu Montam appeared. After that, I constantly saw Madame Shen in tears. No Pentan would often mock Madame Shen, saying, "Do you really think you can compete with a noble lady bred for over 10 years by a powerful aristocratic family?"
I have never wanted to fight with anyone.
Back then, Madame Shen would often look up at the pitch-black sky, sighing deeply, and say she wanted to go back. I asked her, "Madame Shen, where is it you want to go back to?" He just smiled again, not saying a word. After a long silence, Madame Shen looked at me and asked, "I won. Do you think that everyone being equal and women fighting for their own rights are ridiculous ideas?"
Madam, we've been raised since childhood to believe in male superiority.
And that the emperor's authority is absolute.
To hear you suddenly say these things, it's just hard to believe. I won't call those ideas foolish, but they are truly things we wouldn't even dare to dream of.
Madame Shen gazed blankly into the distance, looking lost.
Only after a long silence did she speak.
Before I came to this world, I used to read a lot of novels. Without exception, they always portrayed the time-traveling women as incredibly foolish and clumsy.
While the noble-born ladies of high society were always brilliantly clever. Using their power and influence, they would plot to destroy the time traveler, leaving her with a tragic end.
But even back then, I still wanted the time traveler to win.
Because those books made the idea of equality sound so foolish, while imperial power and family status were treated as absolute truths.
But I think, no matter how foolish that time-traveling woman might have been, maybe the words she spoke would act like a tiny spark, eventually igniting a fire in someone in the future.
Maybe one day that person would raise their fist and shout, "Our kings and lords born better than us."
And that is so much better than those high and mighty noble ladies preaching their class systems.
So, even though I know people will mock me, I will still say these things. I'm willing to be that foolish time traveler in those stories.
Madame Shen spoke a lot of things that day, but I still didn't understand a single word of it. Later on, Madame Shen fell gravely ill.
As she lay on her deathbed, she held my hand tightly and whispered, "Hawan,
In this entire mansion, you are the only one I can trust. Please, help me take care of Ayun and Aileen.
they are still so young." Their minds aren't fully formed yet. Do not teach them about equality like I did before.
Those ideas simply don't work in this world.
You must teach Yuan the 3 obeisances and 4 virtues,
To accept that men are superior and women are subordinate.
and that a husband is his wife's master. Teach Lin the proper duties between ruler and subject, and the 3 guides and 5 virtues. Think, only by doing this can they survive in this place.
Especially Yun.
She is a girl, and living in this harsh world will be so much harder for her.
You must put more effort into teaching her how to survive.
Madame Shen was truly different from everyone else in this world.
But when she passed away, it was as if she had finally realized something, and was ultimately broken and assimilated by this harsh world.
Wei Ling was only 7 years old back then.
And Wei Yin was 12. Wei Yun was a sensitive and clever girl,
Witnessing her mother's tragic death,
made her grow up much faster than her peers.
Later,
Even after entering the palace, she treaded with absolute caution every step of the way.
eventually climbing all the way to the position of empress.
but Wei Lin, no matter how hard I tried to teach him,
He still only lived by the rules Lady Shen taught him. The very next day,
Wei Ling begged the emperor in court to grant in marriage to Wen Zhao.
sending the entire court into an uproar. Prime Minister Wei rebuked him in front of all the officials. "You disgraceful son! Shut your mouth. Enough of this nonsense."
In ancient times, marriage has always been decided by parents
And arranged by matchmakers. How dare you make your own decision? Father!
Wasn't the betrothal between Yar and me personally arranged by you? Lady Shen had passed away early,
So I was the one who watched Wei Lin grow up. His marriage contract with Wen Zhao had been decided a long time ago.
back then, she wasn't the world-renowned defender general, Wen Zhao.
Nor was she the despised captive courtesan of Baidi.
Back then, Wen Zhao,
Just like her name suggested,
was like the pure, bright moon in the sky. She was the most talented young lady in the capital, and the universally acknowledged most beautiful woman.
her peerless talents were unmatched across the land. Every spring, she would represent the goddess on the phoenix stage, playing the zither to pray for blessings.
Her paintings, calligraphy, and poetry were absolute masterpieces.
Her inkwork was hard to obtain, even for 1,000 gold pieces, and countless scholars wrote verses to praise her.
Sometimes they compared her to a heavenly fairy descending to the mortal world, and sometimes to the flawless, crystal-clear bright moon.
She was like a goddess.
And everyone flocked to her. A single appearance from her was enough to empty the streets.
The Wen family and the Wei family had been close allies for generations. The two of them were childhood sweethearts,
Wei Ling had a spirited and active personality.
loving nothing more than writing, archery, and practicing martial arts. The training grounds were where he spent most of his time. Meanwhile, Wen Zhao had a gentle, quiet nature. She used to spend her days tucked away in her chambers, practicing the zither and painting,
Only occasionally stepping out for poetry gatherings or banquets hosted by the capital's elite ladies.
Yet, two people with such completely opposite personalities found themselves drawn to one another, pulling closer and closer.
When Ye worked with poetry and peed on Wei Win's paper fan,
While Wei Wen would bring her all kinds of strange little toys, bamboo copters,
Clay figurines and sugar puppets, finding new ways to make her smile every single day.
later, the master arranged an early marriage for them.
Otherwise, once Wen Zhao reached her 15th year and came of age,
The suitors would have practically broken down her door.
by then, even the powerful Wei family might not have stood a chance. At that time, Wei Yun had already entered the palace as a royal consort.
And was deeply favored by the emperor.
What the master feared most was the next imperial selection.
If the Wen family sent her to the palace, Wei Yuan would surely lose her favor. Securing this betrothal all only bound the two families closer together,
But also eliminated a massive threat to Wei Yun.
though it was a calculated move.
It did establish a real, binding engagement between them.
But that engagement was tacitly canceled 3 years ago, when she was sent away to Badai.
Chancellor Wei's eyes widened with fury, while Wei Lin merely scoffed, tacitly accepting it. Who agreed to that? Chancellor Wei roared in rage. You rebellious brat.
Spare me your excuses. If you dare bring a northern Dai camp whore into this house.
I will smash my head against the wall and die right here.
Just as it looked like blood would spill between father and son, the emperor finally spoke up, trying to persuade Wei Lin.
I believe the Chancellor makes a valid point.
Even if Wen Zhao was once glorious, that is all in the past. She is now nothing but a camp whore of the northern Dai. And you?
Are now the guardian general of our Sheng kingdom.
I believe only Princess Chaohua is worthy of you.
At the mention of Princess Chaohua, Wei Lin's face instantly darkened.
3 years ago, the one who should have been sent to Beide for the political marriage was Princess Chaohua.
Back then, Beide only demanded 50 million taels of silver and a princess for the alliance. They never demanded our kingdom send 3,000 tribute women.
But no one expected that Princess Chaohua would flee her own wedding halfway there. She fled all the way back, throwing herself at the emperor's feet,
and weeping hysterically. She claimed she didn't want to go through with the political marriage, but running away halfway through the wedding was an absolute humiliation for Baidi. Enraged, Baidi immediately mobilized his army, threatening to flatten Shingo. Some argued that Princess Zhaohua should be dragged back and handed over immediately, but others countered that the princess was completely plain-looking and lacked any real talent. Sending her back now would do nothing to appease the Baidi king's thunderous rage. What kind of peerless beauty could possibly calm his wrath? Instantly, everyone's thoughts turned to Wen Zhao, even though Lord Wen was utterly unwilling. The imperial decree was absolute and could not be defied. That very night, they drugged Wen Zhao with a heavy sleeping potion and stuffed her into the bridal sedan heading straight for Baidi. Sure enough, the king of Baidi was absolutely overjoyed. He decided to let the princesses escape. Slide. But having tasted the sweet tenderness of Shenguo's women, he was far from satisfied. He demanded that Shenguo present another 3,000 tribute women for his soldiers to enjoy.
Princess Zhaohua had been pampered in luxury since birth,
living off the sacrifices of her people. Yet when the crucial moment came, she shirked her royal duties. Her selfish escape tore 3,000 Shengo families apart.
Wen Zhao and those 3,000 innocent women bore the brutal consequences of her actions.
Yet, she didn't feel a single shred of guilt.
She even proudly bragged to the other noble ladies at the palace banquet. I heard that Wen Zhao is living a nightmare over there. Why would I lie? I asked around.
She was too stubborn and refused to submit to the king of Baidi. In the end, he completely lost his patience and threw her into the military camps to be tormented by the soldiers. It's absolutely hilarious. These so-called talented women are nothing but hypocritical snobs. At the neighboring table, Wei Lin was so consumed with rage that he crushed his wine glass with his bare hand. The moment the palace banquet ended, he knocked out the two maidservants beside Princess Zhaohua and pinned her against the wall with a dagger, warding her through gritted teeth. If you dare utter another word of slander against Wen Zhao, I will end your life. Being so close to him, Princess Zhaohua's face flushed a deep crimson, completely forgot that she was being threatened, and bashfully whispered, okay. You see, Wei Lin had inherited Lady Shen's breathtaking beauty. His features were exceptionally stunning. Even compared to a beauty like Wen Zhao, most acclaimed handsome men would pale in comparison next to him. Only when Wei Lin stood beside her did they look like a match made in heaven. Only then did everyone marvel at what a perfect match they truly were. If he hadn't spent all his days riding, shooting arrows, and practicing martial arts, and had instead attended poetry clubs and grand banquets year-round like other wealthy young heirs, perhaps the refined gentleman famous throughout the capital today would have been him, and no one else. Ever since then, Princess Zhaohu visited him at the training grounds, time and again, under the guise of wanting to practice riding and archery. But Wei Lin was completely dedicated to his military training and ignored her completely. Later, the emperor wanted to bestow a royal marriage upon Princess Zhaohua, but she refused to marry anyone but Wei Lin. Had left the emperor feeling somewhat guilty. He couldn't openly force the marriage, so he could only drop hints time and again that if Wei Lin married Princess Zhaohua, he would break the rule that imperial sons-in-law cannot hold office in the imperial court just for him.
Wei Lin pretended not to understand,
Repeatedly turning down the offer,
backing it out until now.
Now, Princess Zhaohua was already 20 years old and still unmarried. This time, when the emperor mentioned yet again that only Princess Zhaohua was a match for him, he was once again hinting for him to marry the princess. Still, Wei Lin did not respond. Instead, he turned to face the assembly of officials and said word by word, I only learned yesterday that of the 53 women I rescued from Baidi, only Wen Zhao remains alive today. The irony is, 3 years of brutal torture and beating didn't crush their will to live. Do any of you know what it feels like to have long needles hammered through your fingertips? Have you ever felt your flesh being torn apart or your bones shattered inch by inch? If they hadn't gone to Baidi 3 years ago, would you still be standing in this court today, dressed in your fine robes, recklessly debating right and wrong? Your Majesty, would your throne still be secure? The women you dismiss as Baidi prostitutes bore the duties of a princess and protected the peace of our kingdom for 3 years. How are they not worthy of me? The court officials looked at each other, their faces burning with embarrassment. Wei Lin had ripped away the final fig leaf of decency from their faces. They were nothing but a bunch of cowards who relied on women to trade for peace. His words were utterly treasonous. The emperor's face darkened instantly. Chancellor Wei's face went completely pale, fearing what Wei Lin might say if he let this continue. He quickly cut in. Your Majesty, my son is young and reckless. Speaking so recklessly. It is this minister's failure to discipline my son. To take a wife, he actually demands your Majesty's decree, and he even insists on a proper formal wedding, complete with all the traditional 3 letters and 6 rites. The entire process would take at least 1 month,
Actually, there is no need for so much ceremony. A simple sedan chair can carry her away right now. I will allow you to take her as a concubine. Don't think I don't know you secretly brought Wen Zhao back to your residence. Since you don't feel safe sending her back to the Wen family, if you won't think of the Wei family, won't you at least think of your sister? She is carrying your unborn nephew.
Although this was only a concession Prime Minister Wei made to temporarily appease Wei Lin, what he said was indeed true.
Now that the Wen family wants Wen Zhao dead,
She absolutely cannot be sent back. Moreover, Wei Lin and his sister, Wei Yun, share a deep bond.
And he couldn't bear to see her struggle in the imperial harem.
I heard about what happened in court today from Zhao Liu. I couldn't help but break into a cold sweat for Wei Lin. If not for the Wei family's deep-rooted power and fact that he has repeatedly proven his worth in battle over the past 3 years,
Not only forcing the enemy state to surrender, but also dealing with all the surrounding predatory neighbors.
just based on his reckless words today, his entire clan would probably have been executed.
为了杀他本假设备下，这样
I have failed you, forcing you to become a concubine.
But don't worry.
This is only a temporary measure.
I will never marry anyone else. Once you recover, I will make you my first wife. I couldn't help but remind him, General, if you marry a wife like this, you will become the laughingstock of the entire world. Welling asked me to personally take care of Wen Zhao. For the past few days, she has hurt me several times. She is terrified of people. The moment anyone gets close to her, she clutches her head, screaming and crying, begging them not to hit her. When I brought her the medicine to neutralize the poison,
She thought I was trying to poison her, and bit down hard on my hand. She even knocked over the medicine bowl, scalding the little maid who carried it. This is Wen Zhao's current state.
let alone being a concubine.
She can't even live like a normal person anymore.
With you acting like this, the master is utterly disappointed in you. I'm afraid the entire inheritance will go to the second young master now. Lady Lu must be secretly gloating right now. Mama. She is Wen Zhao. She did nothing wrong. The only thing wrong is this cruel world. Let others say whatever they want. I don't care about the Wei family fortune anyway. Of course, I know she is Wen Zhao. Back then, she was the most celebrated beauty and genius under heaven. Who didn't know her name? But that was 3 years ago. I looked at Wei Lin standing before me, and for a moment, I saw the vibrant, spirited Lady Shen in him.
But Lady Shen's tragic end. I gritted my teeth and pressed on. General,
If you insist on marrying Wen Zhao, I'm afraid even Lady Shen wouldn't rest in peace.
although saying this is unfair to Wen Zhao,
I have to do it. Lady Shen's death back then was definitely linked to Liu Mantang. The moment Lady Shen passed away,
she immediately usurped her place and became the new Lady Liu.
fortunately, the master still felt guilty toward Lady Shen. Even after Lady Liu gave birth to the second young master,
He still focused entirely on grooming Wei Lin.
Lady Liu has been harboring resentment for a long time. Now, with Wei Lin insisting on marrying Wen Zhao,
Isn't he playing right into her hands?
how can I stand by and watch Lady Shen's child get schemed against by her again? At the mention of Lady Shen, Wei Lin's expression stiffened. After a long pause, he gently caressed Wen Zhao's cheek and murmured, "My mother would approve. Seeing what I've become today, she would surely be proud of me. She would surely, if I were to abandon Ah Zhao just because I fear the gossip and rumors, that's when she would truly be disappointed in me." For a moment, I was completely speechless. Perhaps he is actually right.
Would someone like Lady Shen really want Wei Lin to send Wen Zhao back to die?
I don't think so. I look at Wen Yao lying on the bed and let out a soft sigh.
The day Wen Zhao married into the family, it caused a massive scandal.
Her mental state was extremely unstable. They had to tie her up just to get her into the bridal sedan. We were terrified she would make a scene on the way. Wei Lin had even thoughtfully replaced the rough hemp rope with soft silk. Fearing she might have a panic attack on the way, he had even given her some soothing medicine. But despite all their precautions, the inevitable happened when the sedan chair hit a bump near the side gate of Wei Manor. That single jolt triggered some deeply painful buried memories in Wen Zhao. She began screaming hysterically, begging her parents not to do this to her, and crying out for help, sobbing that it hurt so much. Her agonizing screams instantly caught the attention of passersby. A crowd quickly gathered, blocking the path of the bridal sedan. Everyone began whispering and gossiping. Wait, isn't this the eldest daughter of the Wen family? The one who just came back from Northern Dai? She looks completely insane. No wonder the Wen family disowned her. Exactly. The Wei family must be out of their minds. I can't believe they're letting a dirty Northern Dai prostitute become Wei Lin's concubine. To think, Wen Zhao used to be the dream woman of every man in the city. Seeing her like this now, it's just pitiful. As the crowd grew larger,
Wen Zhao's panic only intensified. She began violently thrashing her body against the walls of the sedan chair. One of the sedan carriers lost his footing, and the entire sedan chair tipped over, crashing to the ground. Wen Yao curled herself into a tight ball and scrambled out of the wreckage. Shivering violently, she dragged her crippled leg, stumbling as she desperately tried to flee. Her carefully styled hair and makeup were smeared with dirt. With her hair wild and disheveled, she looked like a literal ghost. Seeing her in such a wretched state, the onlookers' disgust only deepened. By the time Wei Lin rushed to the scene, she was already surrounded by the mocking crowd. When the bystanders saw him arrive, they scrambled to avoid offending the powerful Wei family and quickly dispersed. Wei Lingning pulled the shivering Wen Zhao into his arms. "It's all right, Zhao. It's over. Now. You're safe with me." Feeling herself held so tightly and unable to break free, she sank her teeth deep into his neck with wild, animalistic fury. Having his neck, such a vulnerable spot, bitten so hard, bright red blood instantly gushed out. Wei Ling furrowed his brows in pain, but he still held Wen Zhao tightly, refusing to let go. He stubbornly repeated, "Hey Zhao, I've brought you home. You're safe now." Tears rolled down his cheeks, heavy drops splashing onto the floor. It was hard to tell if it was guilt, heartache, or both. Only when she finally calmed down did Wei Lin gently bend down and carry her back to the Wei estate. While bandaging his wound, the physician couldn't stop shaking his head. Good thing to stop shaking his head. She really bit down with everything she had. She was literally trying to kill you. If she had hit your carotid artery, you might not even be drawing breath right now. The formidable general of the Zheng state, who made enemies tremble on the battlefield, had actually almost died twice at the hands of a single woman. It was truly unbelievable. Wei Lin gently touched the white gauze wrapped around his neck, his gaze turning deep and sorrowful. She must have suffered terribly in Baidi. The physician glanced at Wen Zhao, who was curled up tightly in the corner of the room, and shook his head before leaving. After seeing the physician out, I realized neither of them had eaten a single thing all day. So, I went to the kitchen and brought over 2 bowls of freshly stewed corn and pork rib soup. As soon as the savory aroma of the soup hit her, Wen Zhao's eyes lit up instantly. She swallowed hard, her gaze trembling as she looked at Wei Lin. Wei Lin gave a helpless, tender smile. He took one of the bowls and squatted down in front of her. "Hey, Ju, let me feed you, okay?" Wen Yao didn't answer him. Starving and desperate, she reached her bare hand straight into the hot bowl to grab a rib, but the soup had just come off the stove and was boiling hot. Screaming in pain, Wen Zhao instantly yanked her hand back. Wei Lin quickly set the bowl down and grabbed her hand to check the burn. I quickly found some burn ointment in the room and handed it to him. Wei Lin gently wiped her hand clean, bit by bit, before carefully applying the soothing ointment. As her sleeve slid up, her bare arm was exposed, a horrific patchwork of scars, both big and small. My heart ached as I recalled when I changed her clothes earlier. Her entire body was covered in old, tragic scars. Her entire body was covered in scars, except for her face. Such a beautiful face. Perhaps even the enemy couldn't bear to ruin it. Wei Ling's gaze was fixed on the scars on her arm.
回家不喝了.
Staring at him blankly for a long time, she murmured, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have bitten you just now." Wei Ling's eyelashes trembled slightly. "Do you know who I am?"
Wen Yao shook her head.
He asked again. "Do you know who you are?" Wen Zhao still shook her head. Wei Lin asked me to bring over a new blanket. Wen Zhao was terrified of people, especially men. He didn't dare share the bed with her, but he wanted to stay by her side at all times. So he decided to just set up a makeshift bed on the floor right next to her. When I went in, Wei Lin was feeding her the medicine. I don't know how long he had been coaxing her, but this time Wen Zhao actually didn't get triggered. She obediently drank the medicine, sip by sip. Wei Lin rewarded her with a piece of candy. With the sweet candy in her mouth, she actually burst into tears. Wei Lin wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes and asked anxiously, "What's wrong? Is the candy not sweet?"
Wen Zhao didn't say a word.
Suddenly, she smashed the medicine bowl, picked up a sharp shard from the floor, and pointed the sharp edge at Wei Lin. Her hand trembled, slicing a cut across his face. Seeing the faint trace of blood seeping out,
Wen Yao sold and scrabbled backward.
until her back hit the headboard. Holding the porcelain shard, she stood in a defensive stance. She asked, tremblingly, What do you want to do?" Fearing she would hurt herself,
Wei Lin quickly grabbed her wrist.
wrested the shard away, and threw it to the floor. He let out a soft sigh.
Ju, just get some good sleep.
"You don't want to see me? Then I'll sleep outside," Wei Lin said. When Zhao looked up, "You're so good to me. Isn't it just so you can bully me?" My heart trembled violently. "No," he murmured. gently stroking Wen Zhao's head. I just want you to call me Wei Lin. Wen Zhao pursed her lips. Her expression was filled with confusion. After a long pause, she still murmured, whispering his name. Hearing his name uttered in the voice he had yearned for day and night after 3 long years, his entire body trembled uncontrollably. Watching them, my own heart clenched in agonizing pain. I was afraid that if I stayed any longer, I wouldn't be able to hold back my tears. So I quickly finished making the bed and slipped out of the room. Back in my room, I tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. My heart was heavy with sorrow. The Wen Zhao of the past was so gentle and beautiful. A soft, faint smile always played on her lips. Her beauty, talent, family background, and elegance were unmatched. She was like the moon surrounded by a galaxy of stars. But now, that proud daughter of heaven, once as pure and bright as the moon, was truly gone. I didn't dare to imagine just how much torture she had endured in the hands of the Northern Dai. Sighing, I pushed open my door and decided to go out for a walk to clear my head. Before long, I saw Wei Lin sitting alone in the pavilion, drinking. Wei Lin rarely drank before. He was always busy training the army day and night. Drinking could easily cloud his judgment. He would only drink with his brothers in arms after winning a battle. Now that the Northern Dime had been defeated, there was no need for military campaigns. The military training had become much more relaxed. Wei Zi spent every spare moment he could squeeze out just to accompany Wen Zhao. I never imagined a man could be so incredibly gentle and meticulous. In all my years of living, I had only ever seen wives catering to their husbands' every single need. I had never once seen a husband with the patience to care for his wife like this. When I was in confinement after childbirth, my lower body was in such agonizing pain that I couldn't even get out of bed. Yet my husband would just throw a bowl of cold rice at the head of my bed every day, complaining that I was being too delicate. He even said he was already doing me a massive favor by bringing me food while running around to make a living, and told me I should be grateful.
To him, throwing some food to a sick wife was considered caring for her.
Later, I fled to the Wei mansion and saw that most wealthy, noble families were exactly the same. When the master fell ill, the mistress had to serve him day and night without even changing her clothes. When my madam fell ill, only a few maids would gather to look after her. As for the master, he was always nowhere to be found. It had always been that way. But then I saw Wei Lin. Because one of Wen Zhao's legs was crippled, making it painful for her to walk, he personally chose the softest plush carpet to cover her entire room. Every day, Wei Lin would taste her food before she ate, and he would personally coax her into taking her medicine. No matter how busy he was, he would always make time to sit and talk with Wen Zhao, to heal the wounds on her body. He searched far and wide, consulting almost every renowned doctor, but her injuries were far too old. The physicians all shook their heads, saying they could only ease her suffering, but could never fully cure her. Later, Wei Lin heard from someone that there was a miracle doctor in Danzhou, said to be a modern-day Ha Tuo. Without a second thought, he traveled thousands of miles to find him. The doctor said he couldn't handle the bumpy ride on a fast horse, and insisted on traveling slowly by carriage, treating commoners along the way. So he told Wei Lin to head back first. Although it would take quite a long time, at least there was hope at last.
Wei Lin, a great general, had the time to do all this.
I suddenly recalled how my husband used to make excuses about being too busy
And found it laughably pathetic.
As usual, I brought the restorative tonic to Wen Zhao.
Wei Lin naturally took it from me.
Scooped up a spoonful and gently blew in it to cool it down. Seeing this, I said with genuine envy, Miss Wen is so incredibly blessed
To have met such a wonderful man like you.
Wei Lin corrected me. You shouldn't say that.
Zhou is also an exceptionally wonderful woman.
He was right. 3 years ago, even Wei Lin might not have been worthy of her. Even though her past glory is gone,
No one can deny that she is still an extraordinary woman. Slowly, Wen Zhao grew less afraid of people.
her condition was improving day by day.
But soon, I noticed something wasn't right.
Wen Zhao was secretly hoarding food, and since she had learned to speak on her own, she would often tell me she was hungry. But whenever I brought her some pastries, before me knew it, the plate was completely empty.
When Wei Lin got back,
I told him about the doubts weighing on my mind. Wen Zhao was very obedient to him now,
So he was the best person to ask.
After we finished dinner, Wen Zhao said he was hungry again. He tugged at my sleeve, begging me to get him something to eat.
Wei Lin took his hand and asked softly,
Zhao, are you really hungry?
Wen Yao lowered his eyes and nodded. Wei Lin said, "Didn't we promise each other last time that we wouldn't lie? Are you trying to lie to me, Zhao?" He bit his lip and fell silent for a moment. "Feel a bit guilty," he murmured. I hid it.
I saved it for the others to eat. Wei Lin asked gently, "Who are the others?"
I don't know. There are so many of them. I can't remember. But whenever we get food, We always have to hide a little bit, so we can share it with everyone.
Wei Lin fell silent.
Wen Zhao had spent 3 years in Baidi.
Who else could the others be?
It could only be those poor, deceased women of Sheng Nation.
In that living hell, they had supported one another,
Watch out for each other, and barely managed to cling to life.
But now, he was the only one left.
为林普礼教您从为他应别贵。
Resting his chin in the crook of his neck,
His shoulders trembling, slightly.
sensing his distress, Wen Zhao asked timidly, "Are you angry?" Pixat,
I'm sorry. I was wrong. I won't do it again. Wei Lin shook his head.
"No, I'm not."
But they won't be able to get these things you saved, Zhao. How about I take you to burn them for them one of these days, okay?
Wen Zhao nodded in confusion.
And after a brief hesitation, raised his arms to hug him back. The next day, Wei Lin took Wen Zhao to the mass grave to pay tribute to those innocent, deceased women of Sheng Nation. He carefully packed up all the pastries he had hidden, and then went to the incense shop with Xiao Liu to buy plenty of incense and ritual offerings before heading up the mountain with them. The mountain path was steep and rugged.
作为林开语温交往的失败。
When he saw the endless mounds of graves, large and small, dotting the land,
Wen Zhao's expression instantly froze. Xiao Liu began to skillfully burn the ritual paper money.
I lit another bundle of incense and candles
And planted them along the path.
Wei Lin took the pastries and food I had packed and handed them to Wen Zhao, telling him to throw them into the fire. I don't know if it was just my imagination, but the moment those things were tossed into the flames, in the dancing firelight reflected in Wen Zhao's dark eyes, his gaze suddenly cleared for a brief second. It wasn't the vacant, helpless look from before. It was a sharp, clear gaze, one that hid a profound, immense sorrow. That was definitely not the look of a mentally unstable person. But it only lasted for a single second. The next moment, he drifted right back into his usual dazed state. I rubbed my eyes, wondering if my mind was just playing tricks on me.
Wei Lin gave strict orders.
No one, except Xie Liu and me, was allowed near the place where he and Wen Zhao stayed. For one thing, Wen Zhao was still unstable.
And Wei Lin was afraid too many people would frighten him. For another, Wei Lin had never gotten along with Madame Liu.
And the master also had a huge issue with Wen Zhao, so the less trouble the better. But after all, they were still living inside the Wei mansion. They were bound to run into each other, eventually. No matter how well Wei Lin protected him, accidents were bound to happen. That day happened to be Prime Minister Wei's 45th birthday. Many high-ranking officials and noble guests came to offer their congratulations. Outside the courtyard walls, firecrackers were deafening. Wen Zhao huddled under the blankets, shivering with fear.
Wei Lin. Where is he?
Where did he go? Please, tell me where he is. Don't worry. He's perfectly fine. Today is the master's birthday. Since he's the eldest son, he has to attend the banquet. He'll be back as soon as it's over.
Wen Zhao nodded blankly, only half understanding.
Saying he felt a little cold and asked me to fetch him a bowl of hot soup. Autumn had snuck up on us, and the weather was getting colder. Without giving it a second thought, I headed straight to the kitchen. I had no idea that leaving him would trigger a total disaster. When I got back, Wen Zhao was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, firecrackers started going off. The crowds were bustling and shifting. I frantically searched all over for her. Suddenly, I noticed a massive crowd gathered layers deep outside the main hall.
Wen Zhao was hunching her shoulders, keeping her head low, tugging at Wei Lin's sleeve as she hid behind him.
When the second young master saw her, his eyes flared red with anger. He pointed a finger at her and yelled, "You're the one who was supposed to be sent to the northern enemy state! What are you doing here at my father's banquet?" His voice carried a strange, childlike ignorance. The second young master carelessly bumped into Wen Zhao and laughed, saying, "Oh, I forgot. Big Brother was the one who brought you here." Big Brother really does things differently from normal people. How could he actually bring someone like you? He is only 10 years old. If an adult hadn't put those words in his mouth, how could he possibly know to say any of this? I squeezed my way through the crowd, only to see Lady Liu comforting the wailing second young master. Wei Lin had kept him aside, sending him sprawling several feet away. The boy screamed in pride, "Mother! Mother!" As the legitimate eldest son of our Wei family. "How dare you treat your stepmother like this? Master, you were always so biased. It's bad enough that you only care about Wei Lin. But now that my son is being bullied like this, are you just going to stand by and do nothing? I know a living person like me shouldn't compete with a dead woman.
But my son is my absolute life.
He is just a child."
He only spoke without thinking, and he gets treated like this? If Wei Lin really takes over the household in the future,
And how will there be any room left for us to survive? Lady Liu was putting on her usual act, playing the weak, pitiful victim to win sympathy. What was supposed to be a wonderful banquet
had now been turned completely upside down.
The guests who came to celebrate were all exchanging awkward looks, struggling to hold back their laughter. The last time Wen Zhao entered the family, It was already a massive joke.
And with another scene like this, the Wei family has truly become the laughingstock of the entire capital.
威灵可真叫是喊。
And asked her gently,
Zhao. Who brought you here? Ken Zhao huddled closer to his side and muttered. You asked for me. She brought me here.
"You're lying."
I've never even seen you before. But Wen Zhao was completely out of her mind. Why on earth would she frame her? Anyone with half a brain could see Lady Liu brought her out on purpose,
Just to humiliate Wei Lin, and it was painfully obvious who had spoon-fed the second young master those toxic lines.
What a spectacular drama. Everyone in the crowd was eating it up.
Wei Lin drew his long sword, pointing it right at Lady Liu.
He sneered. Who gave you the nerve to touch her?
My heart skipped a beat.
No matter what, Lady Liu was still his mother in name. Wei Lin didn't hesitate for a second to point a blade at her. I did.
What?
Are you planning to kill your own father next? You ungrateful brat. No matter what, she is still your mother.
How dare you?
Draw a sword against her. This family is still not yours to rule.
I was willing to turn a blind eye to you taking Wen Zhao as a mistress.
Then let it slide. But for a trashy camp whore? You actually dare to walk all over your own father?
Wei Lin glared at him coldly,
And suddenly burst into a dark laugh. He sheathed his sword, leaving Lady Liu to collapse onto the floor in terror.
Wei Lin sneered.
He spat out every single word. My mother died 14 years ago. Prime Minister Wei, you are the one who killed her.
Did you honestly forget?
Do you think you have a clean conscience? What right do you have to preach to me? Haunted by the sudden rush of memories.
Master Wei's pupils dilated in pure shock.
Wei Lin bent down, scooped Wen Zhao into his arms, and carried her away, pushing right through the crowd.
That very night, he immediately packed his bags, preparing to leave the Wei estate for good. Ever since Wen Zhao came back, he had been busy getting a new place of their own. I was actually planning to move out in about 10 days anyway. I just didn't expect that day to come so soon. Wei Ling asked if I would go with him. Honestly, the only reason I stayed at the Wei mansion was to repay Madame Shen's kindness. Now that he was leaving, there was absolutely no reason for me to stay. I went back to pack up some clothes, along with the little savings I'd scraped together over the years.
Along the way, Wen Zhao was so quiet and sweet.
But I couldn't stop thinking about how she had recognized Madame Liu back there. It just didn't make sense. There was no way Madame Liu would have personally lured her over. She would have sent a maid to do it. If she had gone herself and got identified, it would have completely blown her cover. Madame Liu couldn't possibly be that stupid.
Yet, Wen Zhao only knew Wei Ling,
Me and Xiaolu. Just the three of us. If she'd never met Madame Liu before, how could she have pointed her out so accurately? The more I thought about it, the more suspicious I became. Not long after we moved out,
the miracle doctor from Danzhou finally arrived.
I didn't know if this counted as a double blessing. The doctor was a white-haired, elegant, elderly man.
But his treatment methods were both bizarre and terrifying.
To treat her leg ailment, he actually wanted to slice her leg open with a knife. I had never heard of anything so shocking in my life. I was so worried this method would only put Wen Zhao through useless suffering, and that it might be better not to treat her at all.
But Wei Ling was absolutely determined to go through with it. Fortunately, 3 months later, Wen Zhao's leg was completely healed.
She could walk just like any normal person. As for the scars on her body, I don't know what kind of medicine the doctor used, but they miraculously faded away too, leaving only faint red marks. After another 10 days of recovery, even those marks would completely disappear. Before the miracle doctor left, he pulled Wei Ling aside for a talk. I must leave today, he said. There is no need to see me off. But there are some things I feel obligated to tell you. This one's illness is fully cured now, whether physically or mentally.
Wen Zhao isn't crazy.
Are you saying Wen Zhao isn't crazy? You could put it that way.
He's not crazy at all. In fact, his mind is perfectly clear.
Just doesn't want to face reality. He'd rather live his life like this. Suddenly, I remembered the brief spark of clarity I saw in Wen Zhao's eyes that day at the mass grave. If he really isn't crazy, then it makes perfect sense why he only recognizes Lady Liu. Wei Ling instantly bolted toward Wen Zhao's room. I quickly threw down what I was holding and rushed after him. The door was slammed open. Wen Yao snapped his head up. Looking absolutely terrified, he cowered back, retreating to the very edge of the bed. His eyes were as dull and lifeless as always, shrouded in the thick, cloudy mist. You're awake, aren't you?
Wen Zhao frowned and looked up.
What
are you talking about?
You're hurting me. I couldn't help but speak up. General, maybe the miracle doctor got it wrong? Don't scare him.
Wenjiao. As long as you are still alive, there is always a chance to start over.
Are those the exact words you once told me?
Look at yourself. What on earth are you doing? Are you truly willing to just live like this?
I remembered those words.
Shortly after Lady Shen passed away, Wei Lin had suddenly run away from home.
That day, a massive storm hit, nearly drowning the entire capital.
Terrified that something might happen to him, I searched desperately everywhere.
Finally, as dusk fell,
Soaked to the bone and completely exhausted, he dragged himself back to the Wei residence. Back then, those were the exact words he kept muttering under his breath.
So, it was Wen Zhao who had said that to him.
I used to wonder why the two of them had such vastly different personalities.
Yet were still so hopelessly drawn to each other. But as it turned out, ever since he was 7 years old, Wen Zhao had been deeply engraved in his heart.
Upon hearing those words,
Wen Zhao's expression froze.
But it was only for a fleeting second.
she quickly went back to her usual cowering, terrified act.
Wei Ling stared intensely at her,
Trying to catch even the slightest crack in her facade. But he found nothing,
Wei Lin let go of her shoulders.
and clenched his fist tight. Swallowing the bitter lump in his throat, he choked out,
Wenjiao, you promised you would never lie to me.
"You broke your promise."
If you want to keep playing this part.
"I'll play along."
Just as he was about to leave,
Wenjiao suddenly looked up and called out to him,
The hazy mist in her eyes cleared,
leaving them bright and piercingly sharp.
"You're right.
"I've been sane for a long time. The moment I saw those graves at the mass burial ground, I woke up."
So Wenjiao really had regained her sanity long ago.
Wei Lin.
Can you please stop being so good to me? You should despise me. You should throw me away and let me rot. I'm not the same Wenjiao I used to be. I even tried to kill you twice.
How can I face you like this?
Instead of letting you see how filthy I've become, I'd rather stay crazy forever.
Wei Ling turned back around.
A storm of emotions raging in his eyes.
"Why do you think you're filthy?" he asked, his voice thick with pain.
Those 3,000 tribute women who were sent with you.
"Do you think they are filthy?"
Wenjiao froze and slowly shook her head.
Wei Ling couldn't hold back his emotions any longer.
He rushed forward and pulled her into a tight embrace.
Ah Chao, none of this is your fault.
The filthy ones are the monsters who abused you. Not you. You aren't just living for yourself anymore. You carry the spirits of those 3,000 tribute women who died with hatred in their hearts.
You don't just have to survive.
And live a life of absolute splendor.
Tear after tear fell onto Wei Lin's shoulder, soaking a small patch of his robe.
Wenjiao wrapped both arms around Wei Lin's neck
And sobbed uncontrollably in his embrace.
all those dark, hopeless days and nights in Baidi.
All of his pain and grievances poured out in this cry,
Echoing through the night wind and reaching every single corner.
a weeping cry of pure heartbreak. "We've clearly been together all this time.
And Wenjiao has been right under my nose, but only at this very moment.
Go, I feel like he has truly come back to life."
The eldest Mrs. Child has been born.
I'm getting old and muddled.
I shouldn't call her eldest miss anymore.
She should be called Her Majesty the Empress now. The Emperor is absolutely overjoyed and has ordered a grand feast in the palace to celebrate. Ziquilan is her biological younger brother. Naturally, he must attend the celebration.
These past few days, Master Wei specifically sent someone with a message.
Asking Wei Lin to enter the palace with him. Thinking, Wei Lin to enter the palace.
After they fell out last time, Master Wei probably regretted it deep down. He kept sending people to test the waters, whether intentionally or not, hoping he would return to the Wei Manor. But Wei Lin ignored them completely.
Sending a message specifically this time
Was his way of swallowing his pride and offering an olive branch.
but Wei Lin had no intention of paying him any mind.
He took Qiao Zhao's hand, and they boarded the carriage to the palace together.
This was Wenjiao's first time attending such an important event since his recovery. He looked absolutely stunning today, draped in a moon-white cloud brocade robe
With a simple, elegant sash tied around his waist, and the touch of semabar between his brows. Even with just a touch of makeup,
He was breathtakingly beautiful.
The moment Wilgel appeared,
he became the center of everyone's attention.
standing by Wei Lin's side,
Every smile and gesture of his was flawless,
dignified and full of grace,
as if he had never been to Baidi, and had always been that same Wenjiao, as pure and gentle as the bright moon and cool breeze.
As fate would have it, the Wen family was seated directly opposite the Wei family, staring at Renju, who had now completely returned to her former glory. They were all utterly dumbfounded, especially her younger sister, Wenya, who was gritting her teeth in sheer rage. Ever since Wenju was sent to the desolate lands of Baidi, the title of the capital's #1 talented beauty had fallen on Wenyu. She was close friends with Princess Choa, and God knows how many times they had mocked Wenju behind her back. Even though Wen Ya dressed up meticulously today,
Everyone's eyes were still instantly drawn to Wen Ju.
Glenn eyed her sister with venomous hatred. Winya stood up and walked over to Princess Chowa.
she whispered something in the princess's ear, and the princess caught on, instantly, smirking triumphantly. The princess raised her voice. We all know General Wei's lady once played the zither like no other, but it has been 3 long years since we last heard it. I wonder if we might be blessed to hear that heavenly melody once again today.
When Wenju first returned to the Wen family, her hands were so damaged, she couldn't even hold chopsticks.
It wasn't that she didn't know how, but that she had grown used to frantically grabbing food with her bare hands and stuffing it into her mouth. In the harsh lands of Baidi, simply staying alive was a miracle. So how could she have cared about elegance or dignity? Everyone assumed Wenju's hands were completely ruined. Besides, the princess wanted to marry Wei Lin, so she already harbored deep malice toward Wenju. During the last imperial court session, Wei Lin's blunt words had deeply embarrassed the emperor. Now, the emperor was more than happy to watch the woman Wei Lin insisted on marrying make a total fool of herself.
The emperor smiled and said, "Indeed, since the famous talent who once moved the world with her music is here today,
Why not play a song to offer it as a prayer for the prince's blessing?" If Wenju failed to play well, she would likely be accused of cursing the royal prince. Wei Lin was about to speak up and decline on her behalf, but Wenju gently held his hand, shaking her head slightly. She stood up, curtsied with utmost respect, and took the ancient zither from the court musician. She hadn't touched a zither in 3 years. Nobody knew what kind of mess she would make of it today. The entire room fell dead silent. Everyone held their breath, watching intently. Wenjue began to play Autumn Geese, her signature masterpiece. The fingering for this piece was incredibly complex, and its difficulty was unmatched. Wenjia smiled as she plucked the zither strings. A clear, melodious tune flowed effortlessly from her fingertips. Its artistry was even more exquisite than her performance 3 years ago. As the song ended, thunderous applause erupted. Wenjia stood up and looked calmly at Wenjia, who was standing beside the princess. Now that I've played the zither, why don't you compose a poem to congratulate the little prince? Wenjia's smug expression instantly withered, turning a deathly shade of pale. Come on, write it. Aren't you usually so good at writing poetry? Wenjia's expression grew incredibly tense. She stammered, unable to squeeze out even 2 words for a long time. Second, Miss Wen, you took my completed, unpublished poetry book and paraded it around as your own work. Have you enjoyed all those unearned praises enough? You're lying. Every single word was written by me. Then tell me, in one of the poems from that collection, Janwen Mountain, is it actually a mountain or a temple? It's a mountain. No, wait, it's a temple. Both wrong. Wishan was actually a monk I met at a temple. Is it because my poem had descriptions of a temple that you just assumed Wenshan was the temple itself? Wenya's face was utterly pale, seeing her reputation completely ruined. She went absolutely wild, slamming her hands down and flipping over a table of food. Wenjiao, why did you have to come back alive?
Why didn't you just die?
Why? Why is it that even when you're like this, everyone's eyes are still drawn to you? I refuse to be your shadow forever. I was supposed to step over you, to show everyone that I'm the one who's superior. Go die!
Die! I'll kill you!
She shrieked hysterically. She lunged forward, clawing to wrap her hands around Wenjiao's neck. But in her blind rage, before she could even reach her, she clutched her head and collapsed to the floor, passing out cold. And just like that, the Wen family was utterly humiliated, right in front of the emperor. Master and Madame Wen frantically ordered the servants to drag her away, while they desperately kowtowed several times, begging for permission to leave early. The banquet hall erupted in whispers and sighs of disbelief. It turned out that the capital's new, most talented lady was nothing but a fraud who stole Wenjiao's poems to build her own fame. The one with real talent had always been Wenjiao. After the imperial banquet ended, everything changed overnight. Wenjiao's single performance took the entire world by storm, while the Wen family's reputation lay in absolute ruins. The most absurd part was, after that day, Princess Chowa was married off in a massive hurry. Word is, she was so desperate to marry Wei Lin, but she actually had him drugged. But as fate would have it, Wei Lin was called away by the empress and didn't touch the drugged pastries. Instead, they were eaten by another minister's son. By the time they were discovered, the two of them were completely naked in bed. To silence the scandalous rumors, the emperor had no choice but to hastily marry the princess off to him. The spoiled princess had never suffered such humiliation in her life. Every single day, she either glared at her husband with utter contempt or ordered him around like a dog. She even went as far as to beat his secret mistress to death. She kept screaming that it was his fault she couldn't marry Wei Lin. But her husband had a fierce temper of his own. Before marrying the princess, he was a coddled young master who always got his way at home. But after marrying her,
His life became worse than a servant's, driven to his absolute limit.
He actually grabbed a knife and stabbed the princess to death. The emperor was absolutely livid. Overnight, the minister's entire family was condemned to execution. Standing outside our manor,
I watched the imperial guards drag those people, one by one, to the execution grounds. I couldn't help but shudder with fear.
When Zhao dropped a coat over my shoulders.
do you know what the empress talked about with the general?
When she called him for a private meeting that day,
Nanny, please don't worry.
Wei Nian knows exactly what he is doing.
That may be so, but I can't help but worry. Wei Lin's behavior lately has been far too abnormal.
Ever since he saw Wei Yun at the palace banquet,
He has been leaving early and returning late.
sometimes not coming home for several days at a time.
Sometimes he even brings a few trusted brothers from the military camp back with him.
But he won't let anyone serve them.
The moment they arrive, they lock themselves in the room.
As if they are plotting a rebellion. Images of the guards dragging those people to the execution grounds keep flashing through my mind. My entire body shuddered with terror.
This is a capital crime. One that could get our entire household executed. The next morning, I deliberately got up early.
And stopped General Wei Lin just as he was about to head out.
Before you get caught, please stop this madness. General, I beg of you, think twice.
Nanny, there are some things I simply have to do.
My sister and I, we never forgot our mother's teachings. The emperor was a full 15 years older than him. I did everything I could to stop him from entering the palace back then, but he told me he was entering the palace precisely to build the world our mother had envisioned. Now that he has given birth to a prince, I will help him command the lords in the emperor's name and turn this corrupt world upside down.
Wei Ling pulled my hand away.
And walked away resolutely, without looking back. I stood there in a daze, letting out a helpless sigh. Madame Shin's 2 children grew up looking exactly like her, fearing we might disrupt Wei Lin's plans. Shortly after, Wen Zhao and I left for the countryside, under the pretext of visiting family. For a whole month, we had absolutely no news from the capital.
But then, we happened to hear an excited merchant from the capital say that General Wei had rebelled.
He said there was a brand new regime in the capital now.
When Zhao and I finally breathed a long sigh of relief,
The weight that had been pressing on our hearts was finally lifted.
Soon, Wei Lin came in person to bring Wen Zhao and me back. He looked much thinner.
and there was a deep weariness in his eyes.
Wen Zhao ran over excitedly and threw his arms around him, and the two wept in each other's arms. Inside the carriage, I asked, "General, how do you plan to handle Master Wei? Since we are ushering in a new era, we must completely purge the powerful noble families that have dominated the court for years. And the Wei family is the largest noble house in the capital. But no matter what, Master Wei was his father.
He is dead now, and Lu Mantang is dead too. Their son was taken away by the Liu family
And brought to Yunqiu. Wei Lin slowly opened his eyes and said, "Father was secretly investigating me and discovered my intentions. He came to my estate to persuade me to stop. Suddenly, we heard faint footsteps outside the door.
When the door was pushed open, it was Liu Mantang.
He urged Father to report me, threatening that if Father didn't, he would expose him himself.
Just as he was about to leave,
My father was pierced straight through the heart by an arrow. Father said he had failed my mother and that he couldn't fail my sister and me anymore.
so he chose to support me with everything he had.
But just as success was within our grasp, he took an arrow from me. Before he drew his last breath, he begged me to bury him alongside my mother. I froze. I knew Master Wei had always carried a deep guilt toward Lady Shen. After Lady Shen passed away, he was utterly broken for a long time. Later, he projected all that guilt onto Lady Shen and their two children. He raised them with the utmost care.
But I never, in my wildest dreams, expected him to aid Wei Lin in rebellion, just to ease his conscience.
Wei Ling's voice was soft.
And incredibly calm throughout. He had hated Master Wei for so many years, never once calling him father. Now hearing him finally call him father, I couldn't begin to imagine the complex emotions in his heart. Meanwhile, the one holding the ultimate power in court had become the former empress, Wei Yun. With the young prince ascending the throne,
She rightfully became the Empress Dowager.
rule over the entire imperial court,
She acted swiftly and decisively to implement new reforms,
establishing imperial examinations for women, banning the horrific practice of killing baby girls.
and enforcing monogamy.
She also cracked down hard on political factions and corrupt officials protecting one another, ensuring that only the worthy and talented were appointed. Years later, the state of Shang underwent an earth-shaking transformation.
Everything seemed to be heading in the exact direction Lady Shen had once envisioned.
But by then, I had already grown old and frail. My health was deteriorating more and more each day,
And I feared I wouldn't survive this winter.
and so, keeping it a secret from everyone, I dragged my ailing body to Lady Shen's grave.
In the end, Wei Lin buried Master Wei somewhere else.
refusing to let them lie together.
Perhaps it was for the best. At least she could rest in peace in the afterlife. The snow was falling heavily.
A thick layer of snow had piled up on Lady Shen's tombstone. I raised my hand to brush away the thick snow, and once again, my mind drifted back to that winter
When a courtesan at the Zuhong brothel angered a guest, she was thrown from the upper floor, straight into the freezing, bone-chilling lake.
The winter water was freezing cold, biting into her skin.
The poor courtesan struggled desperately, crying out for help. But everyone on the shore just stood there, completely ignoring her. They even mocked her, sneering that a woman like her deserved to drown. The nation was already facing a national crisis.
Mrs. Shen untied her cloak, placed it in my hands,
And jumped into the freezing lake without a second thought.
Afterward, I asked, "Madam, why did you save her?"
"Your life is far more precious than hers, Yuan. She is a human being too," she replied.
How could I just stand by and watch her die?
Being forced into that life wasn't her fault. Singing and performing on stage wasn't her fault either.
She didn't even know why everyone blamed her for the country's woes.
I know how to swim.
So of course, I couldn't just watch her drown.
But it was that very rescue that permanently ruined her health.
Nu Nandam took that opportunity to harm her, ensuring she wouldn't survive that winter. Before Mrs. Shen passed away, she asked me to take her out for a walk. Holding a paper umbrella, she walked through the pure, pristine snow. She turned back and gave me a brilliant smile.
A one?
My name is Shenji. Everyone only calls me Madam. They've called me that so much, I've almost forgotten who I used to be. As soon as the words left her mouth, she suddenly collapsed to the ground, leaving a deep imprint of her body in the pristine snow. Blood kept spilling from the corners of her mouth, staining the pure white snow with small, vivid patches of crimson, looking just like the scattered red plum blossoms painted on her paper umbrella. Mrs. Shen stared blankly ahead. Is doing this really that foolish?
When she passed away, she doubted everything she had once believed in.
I rested my head against her tombstone, smiling as I whispered, "Look, madam, the things you said, they weren't foolish at all. Your children have accomplished everything you ever wished to do. The sparks she once lit have now become a blessing for future generations." I slowly closed my eyes, feeling my own life slip away, bit by bit.
Suddenly, a panicked cry of Momo rings in my ears.
Right after, I hear the sound of people rushing toward me. It's Wei Lin and the others. They finally found me.
Using the very last of my strength, I curl my lips into a weak smile.
My life, it has been a truly wonderful one.
Wei Ling's children are so incredibly precious, calling out grandma over and over in their sweet baby voices. Even the young emperor is obedient and well-behaved. He has been raised so well. Though my only daughter was drowned years ago, but at least I got to spend my final years peacefully, surrounded by loving grandchildren.
Most importantly, I was fortunate enough to witness the very world Madame Shen once described to me.
No, that's not right. She hated it when people called her Madam. So, Genji, have you finally gone home? I wonder, since I took so long to get here.
If I will still be able to see you. My mother's surname was Shen.
Her name was Ji, but everyone only knew her as Madame Shen. A former courtesan she once rescued begged for an audience.
Sang she wanted to
Read a biography about her. I set down my teacup, and my mind drifted back to that sunset-gilded afternoon, so many years ago. She snatched the Lessons for Women from my hands and threw it onto the ground.
She looked at me and said, "Yarn?"
Don't ever read these books meant to restrict and brainwash women. After a rebellion succeeded, ruling from behind the curtain kept me incredibly busy. Every political matter, big or small, required my attention.
Wei Lun was fully occupied with taking care of Wen Zhao, so he couldn't be of much help to me.
When Wen Jiao was giving birth, she suffered a difficult labor.
She was in agonizing pain the entire night.
Basin after basin of bloody water was carried out.
When Wei Lun finally stepped out of the delivery room,
His legs gave out, and he slumped into the corner, slapping himself hard across the face.
he wept, saying they would never have another child, that giving birth is like walking through the gates of death.
Standing outside the door, my heart was breaking for them. Thankfully, heaven took pity on them in the end, and didn't tear these two lovers apart just as their suffering had finally ended. But after giving birth, Wen Zhao fell into a deep depression for a long time.
Wei Lun was constantly busy caring for the baby and trying to cheer her up.
Which left far more burdens piling onto my shoulders. I was overwhelmed, running myself ragged. When I heard that Bowen, the most famous storyteller of our time, was asking to see me,
My first thought was that he wanted to pitch his latest storybook.
back when I wasn't so busy,
My absolute favorite thing to do was listen to storytellers spin their tales.
if you're talking about the most popular writer in the country today, it has to be Bowie. From tiazas to taverns, and through every street and alley, her storybooks are known to be the most vivid and captivating. She has taken the entire Holy Kingdom by storm. Normally, I would have definitely met with her.
But lately, I've been completely swamped with official duties.
I was just about to tell my servant to send her away, but the servant said, she claims she used to be a courtesan of the Zihong Pavilion, and that your mother once saved her life.
She wants to write a biography. For her.
When I was 12,
My mother fell critically ill after saving a courtesan.
But Lu Mantan secretly swapped one of the herbs in her prescription,
Which ultimately killed her.
To think that bomb, the writer who is now famous all over the Holy Kingdom, is actually the very cousin my mother saved back then.
I immediately put down what I was doing.
The person ushered in looked much younger than I had imagined.
but then again, she was only 16 when she was thrown into the frozen lake.
She is only 4 years older than me. When she saw me, Ohm's expression noticeably faltered.
She stared in a daze for a long time before murmuring, "You and Madame Shen
Look so much alike.
Yes, we do look very alike."
After my mother passed away,
Father would often look at me and sigh at how much I resembled her.
since you want to write a biography for my mother,
Ask whatever you wish.
I will tell you everything I know.
Bowen haunted.
she sat down across from me
Opened to her travel bag.
and took out her paper and brush to grind the ink.
Only then did I notice that she had no fingernails on any of her 10 fingers.
There was only a thin, blood-red membrane-like skin covering them.
Before I could even frown and ask,
Bone pursed her lips into a bitter smile and said, "Back when I was still a courtesan,
I was the top courtesans of the Vuhikon Pavilion. The second young master of the Chu family was deeply infatuated with me. He loved nothing more than hearing me play the zither and sing, but Lord Chu believed I was the one seducing him, so he had someone rip off the fingernail of my index finger. The first time they did it, and 3 months later, when the nail finally grew back, he had them rip it off all over again. After that, it never grew back. That day at Tinchao, the customer insisted that I play the zither. Even when he saw my hand was ruined, he wouldn't let me off. I was forced to pick up the zither and try to play for a little while. Before long, my fingers were a bloody mess, and I couldn't play anymore. In a fit of rage, he grabbed me and threw me off the balcony. So, was that really what happened that day? When my mother passed away, I actually harbored a lot of resentment toward that courtesan I had never even met. I always felt that if my mother hadn't jumped in to save her, she wouldn't have gotten sick. Bone lowered his eyes and forced a wry smile. Smiling bitterly, he said, "I've never seen my mother since the day I was born." My father was a storyteller at a tavern. Every day I would follow him around, holding a tray to collect tips from the customers. Having grown up listening to those old tales, I wanted to write even more interesting ones when I grew up. But when I was 9, my father was beaten to death. The man who beat him claimed my father's stories were making snide, mocking references to him. Even when the authorities came to arrest him, he wasn't afraid at all. He just threw some money at them. And just like that, it was swept under the rug. I was dragged and coerced into a brothel, spending years being trained in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. By the time I was 13, I started taking clients.
I suppose I was one of the lucky ones.
When I was 16, I met Madame Shen, and she bought my freedom. He looked up and tried to sound cheerful, saying, "Let's not talk about it anymore. It all happened so long ago. Besides, I finally achieved my childhood dream of getting rich. I've written so many popular storybooks that people love. How much do you know about Madame Shen's story? I don't want to dwell on the story between my mother and my father. To put it simply, my father met my mother when he was down on his luck. Fortunately, she rescued him. She appreciated all the odd and quirky ideas in his head. With all of the fresh ideas going back and forth, feelings began to grow between them. My father once promised that having her in his life was more than enough for a lifetime. My mother believed him.
But later, he wanted more and more.
Power. Status. He wanted everything. A palace made with absolutely no connections in the Holy Kingdom could never give him the backing he craved. So my dad hooked up with Liu Mantine. The day they finally laid their cards on the table, my mother, tears streaming down her face, asked him why. But he just smeared, "Did you really think I agreed with all those things you said?" I only listened because it was a novel way to pass the time. Now you've given me 2 children, and you have absolutely no family left here. Where else could you possibly go? Don't push your luck. I remember. From that very day, my mother stopped smiling. She would often just stare blankly into space, lost in her own world. Later, when Yu Muntan married into the family, she proved to be incredibly cruel. Yet she always knew exactly how to play the victim. My dad took her side in absolutely everything. It wasn't until my mother passed away that my dad finally woke up to reality. He was absolutely devastated, consumed by grief, but she was already gone. And regret came far too late. So, he poured all his guilt and remorse onto me and Wei Lin. I took a slow sip of my tea and said calmly, "It's nothing more than a story about a heartless man and a heartbroken woman. There is really nothing to be curious about."
Bone nodded.
I'll summarize and skip past this part.
But tell me, what kind of person do you think your mother was?
What kind of person was my mother? 奴们曾 called her stupid.
My dad called her foolish.
The world mocked her for being a hopeless dreamer. But all I remember is that afternoon, under a sky painted with glowing sunset clouds, my mother took the book of rules for women right out of my hands and threw it to the ground.
She told me, Yoon, do not read these books meant to chain and restrict women.
She taught me to have an independent soul, to never look at a husband as if he were my entire sky, but to believe that women must stand strong on their own.
She taught me that everyone is born equal
And that we must never abuse our power to look down on others. My mother once described another world to me.
a place where women can go to school and study alongside men without ever being looked down upon.
A place where they can wear whatever they want.
And choose who they love freely.
In that world, a man can only marry one wife, and taking concubines is absolutely forbidden.
A world with monogamy.
Where women could become government officials, run businesses,
And freely show their faces in public. My mother told me she came from that world. I wanted to go there so badly.
but my mother said we couldn't go just yet.
She was still searching for a way back.
Growing up under her guidance, Waylin and I yearned for that world with all our hearts.
Mother promised that if she ever found a way, she would take us with her.
But we never got to see that day.
When my mother was on her deathbed, she tightly gripped my nanny's hand.
And wept, calling herself foolish.
She begged my nanny to teach me the traditional women's etiquette and rules I had ignored.
And to teach Waylin the proper court behavior he had never learned.
She said everything she had taught us simply wouldn't work in this world.
With those final words,
She gave Waylin and me one last loving, longing look.
and closed her eyes forever.
I couldn't even feel myself crying.
Only the warm, silent streams tracing down my cheeks.
In that moment, my only thought was, if her ideas don't work in this world,
And I will create a brand new world where they do.
I threw myself into learning everything my nanny taught me and entered the palace without a single regret.
The emperor was older than me.
15 years older. Waylin desperately tried to stop me, but I pried open his hands.
Do you remember the world mother used to describe? I am going to make that world a reality.
Only then did Waylin finally let go,
And he didn't disappoint.
He never lost a single battle.
and his control over the military grew stronger by the day.
In truth, the emperor had long harbored a desire to eliminate the Wei family.
Plotting to strip us of our power step by step.
But before he could even make a move, I poisoned him.
The rebellion was a complete success.
Now, following my mother's grand vision,
I am going to build everything she ever dreamed of.
after rambling on and on for what felt like hours, in the blink of an eye, dusk had already fallen,
The warm sunset glow streamed in through the window.
making it feel just like that afternoon.
Boom wrote down everything I said.
The Annie, she asked me,
If you could see Madame Shen just one more time,
"There's anything you would want to say to her?"
I looked up at the fiery red sunset and said softly, I miss her.
If we ever meet again,
I want to tell my mother
that she was the gentlest, kindest soul. And my most beloved mother. Vine put away her brush, organized the papers, and placed them into her bag. Smiling, she said, "I've written it all down. Now my only dream is to compile a book for Madame Shen. A woman like her shouldn't be forgotten by history, lost in obscurity." I stood up to see her off. Before she left, I asked her, "Is Bowen your real name?" She paused, then replied, "Bon," which means to repay a debt of gratitude. I never had a real name. Before entering the Zuhogo brothel, I was just called Daya. Once inside, they called me Hunyao.
But the moment Madame Shen rescued me, I finally got a name of my own. I watched her walk away.
My thoughts racing. The thoughts racing from a despised brothel courtesan to a famous novelist whose stories became the talk of the town.
Once freed from oppression, exploitation, and prejudice,
Even a woman from the brothels can shine brilliantly. If the biography Lin is writing survives the test of time,
Will my mother, one day 1,000 years from now, catch a glimpse of herself in the history books?
part of me hopes she will.
Yet another part of me hopes she won't.
if she had already foreseen her own inevitable tragic end, what kind of faith and courage must she have held to walk down this path?